What's up, everybody? On today's video, we're going to break down the Aruba testimony. We heard it mentioned in opening statements. We dig into it with two witnesses who were at the center of the controversy between John O'Keefe and Karen Reed. Does that controversy give her the motive the Commonwealth needs to prove this case? Let's take a listen. I can't wait to answer your questions and hear your comments about this testimony and anything and everything about this case. Let's jump into it. So as we heard some rumblings in the past about John O'Keefe and Karen Reed getting into it in Aruba with friends and family there, people saw this fight, people heard about this fight, people mentioned this fight, and we knew eventually we were going to get the testimony about what was it? What did John do that made Karen so mad, allegedly? That's important, right? Because everything we've heard from the night of the incident, hanging out at the waterfall, how lovey-dovey they were, how other witnesses wish their marriage was like the relationship John O'Keefe and Karen Reed had. But there was a past. And we've heard that John O'Keefe has had a lot of girlfriends. That testimony has come out. We've heard one was a dance instructor for the kids. One was Bella's mom. And we heard some discussion about Karen Reed potentially showing some jealous tendencies that night, which I personally think is a more relevant motive since, in fact, it's closer in space and time to the incident in January of 2022 than this New Year's trip, since it was potentially happening that same night. But we have New Year's Eve 2021 in Aruba. So this is just a little over a month, I guess, prior to the incident. Is that right? Yeah, not a year and a month. I think it was just a month prior to this incident. So let's get into exactly what happened and what the story was. First, we hear from Laura Sullivan, who was emotional on the stand, seemed very close to John O'Keefe. We got her personal background. She plans this trip all the time, invites friends and family. John O'Keefe and Karen Reed came with John O'Keefe's kids. It was a crazy, sad story. Father of her children passed at his own hand. John was the one that found him after he did it to himself. And John was the godfather to her son. John was always around and supported her afterwards. I mean, it's heartbreaking. All the people that John O'Keefe, took care of and cared about so much, hearing their stories is pretty sad. But the first night, they all go out to dinner in Aruba. Karen Reed paid the bill. Oh, what a jerk, right? It's like, okay, seems nice. She paid the bill, whatever. Then I hear John O'Keefe was a Bama fan, which kind of almost made me fall out of my chair. I was like, wow, Bama fan? That's not a BC fan? So like Bama and Patriots probably. I mean, that's wild. It's just kind of a side note. And then we get into some instructions given by the judge that I thought was interesting and almost highlight this testimony. I feel like, I don't know, if the jury's with you once again, which is the big question, if you're the defense and the jury's with you, you want to read this instruction to throw some shade at this evidence. But if you're worried about it, you just save it till the end so you don't actually highlight what this is. The defense opted for, I believe, having it read now to try and color this testimony as less reliable. And there's two different instructions the judge is going to read. One actually applies to some later testimony. But let's hear how it comes out from the judge, is read to the jury, and then how the testimony actually hits here from Ms. Sullivan.
And where in relation to the hotel did you see him at 10:30?
He was standing behind me at the pool bar.
And at some point does your sister come out to the pool area after putting your mother down?
Yeah, so right before I saw John at the pool bar, I saw my sister. She came out and she was visibly upset.
And, Your Honor, in regard to the instruction that you would request about this, maybe.
All right, thank you. So, jurors, you're about to
Her
hear.
sister comes out and she's visibly upset. That's the lead up to this instruction.
testimony about certain conduct or behavior allegedly committed by Ms. Reed. Be mindful that the defendant is not charged with committing any crimes other than those charged within the indictments. The witness's testimony may not and indeed must not be considered by you as any evidence that the defendant has a bad character or as evidence that she has a propensity to commit the crimes with which she has been charged. You may not take the defendant's prior acts as a substitute for proof that the defendant committed the crimes charged here, but you may consider the act solely on the limited issue of the state of mind of the defendant and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe as it might go to motive or intent. You may not consider this evidence for any other purpose. Specifically, you may not use it to conclude that if the defendant committed the act or acts, that she must also have committed the offenses with which she's charged. You can only use the evidence for the limited purpose of how it goes to the defendant's state of mind, the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe, as it may go to motive. And just for the records, my findings are the same that I made at sidebar previously. Go ahead, Mr. Lally.
Well, let me tell you at first, and again, coming into this, I don't know this story. I didn't know what this Aruba incident was. I knew it was going to center around jealousy. And Bodie asks, lawyer, do you really think that jealousy would cause somebody to murder someone? Yes. There have been cases where that has been the fact. It's wild. And I don't ever try to get into the mind of people that do things like this. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I think it has been a motive in the past. Ashley also asked, Peter, do you think this Aruba incident should have been allowed in? So let me tell you what I was thinking when the judge read this, and it's like, you can't use the defendant's prior bad acts against her or to make her think she has the propensity to commit the crime that she's charged. It's just for motive, for state of mind, whatever. So I kind of thought where this was going was Karen Reed got jealous and punched John O'Keefe or hit him or something like that. There was some physical altercation that shows jealousy is capable of making her hit somebody. And so I kind of like, that's where my mind started going. What are we going to hear? What is this? After hearing the evidence, I'll answer your question, Ashley.
With regard to, at some point, your sister comes out to the pool area where you were, is that right?
Correct.
And do you know where Mr. O'Keefe was at that point?
I do not know.
And when your sister comes out to the pool area, what happened?
She said,
Yeah, that's sustained. I thought you were doing something else.
When your sister comes out to the pool area.
So we thought this was a different part of the testimony, and she's going to read another instruction here in a second. I just thought it was interesting how it was like a little confusing how they went up to sidebar, planned, because the lawyers all know, in case you haven't figured it out, we know when certain testimony is going to come out. That's why when we have a motion in limine and a judge grants it or denies it, sometimes we have special instructions. So we got to tell the judge, okay, now is when I'm going to go into this testimony. So if you're going to read the special instruction, but then there was some kind of miscommunication, obviously.
How would you describe her demeanor when she comes out?
No, I'll allow that.
she was frustrated.
And at some point, did you have a conversation, without regard to what the conversation was, at some point, did you have a conversation with her about something that had just happened?
Yes.
Now, following that conversation with your sister, at some point subsequent to that, Mr. O'Keefe come back out to the pool area?
After I spoke with her, yes, he came out to the pool area.
And you know about how long a period of time it was between the time that your sister came out to the pool area and Mr. O'Keefe came out to the pool area?
I mean, I would say approximately 20 minutes, but I don't really know exact timing.
Now, when Mr. O'Keefe came back out, did you have any conversation with him?
I did.
And can you describe that conversation?
All right, is this the instruction that you were talking about instead of the other one? All right, so
Here's the correct instruction now. This more applies to what's about to be testified to.
I have another instruction for you. So you're about to hear evidence of statements made by John O'Keefe. Is that accurate now, Mr. Lally?
Yes.
All right. These statements are being...
Not bad acts of Karen Reed. Instead, it's statements of John O'Keefe. And she has to read this because it's not necessarily, it's technically hearsay, right? Because it's an out-of-court statement. Maybe used to prove the truth of the matter asserted, maybe not. And I think there could be an argument that whether or not what he said is true is not as important as the effect it had on him, the fact that he believed it, the effect it had on Karen Reed, the effect it had on this listener potentially, how it explains future actions. Also, if the declarant is deceased, there are other exceptions. So the fact that John O'Keefe is no longer alive, that allows some leniency and different exceptions to hearsay as well.
admitted only for a limited purpose of establishing John O'Keefe's state of mind. You're not to consider this testimony as proof that the defendant has a bad character or propensity to commit crimes. The testimony of witnesses recounting conversations with Mr. O'Keefe can only be used as they go to the defendant's motive or intent on January 28th or 29th, and only if you find that the defendant was aware of Mr. O'Keefe's state of mind at the time of the crime and would be likely to respond to it. There need not be direct evidence that the defendant learned of Mr. O'Keefe's state of mind, so long as you reasonably can infer from the evidence that she did learn of it. Okay, Mr. Riley.
This is subject to our objection.
So this is a good question here by S. Crook. Given what the judge is saying to the jury, why even have these Aruba folks be witnesses at all? I'm confused. I guess she thinks it goes to potential motive and that even John O'Keefe knew that Karen Reed was jealous. That's all I can really think of. I don't think it's appropriate necessarily that it came in because I think it's pure propensity evidence. She was jealous in the past, so she must be jealous in the future. I think it's kind of wild to step again to say that because she got jealous because she thought on a drunken night John O'Keefe kissed a girl. And if anything, if I am the defense, I'll just let the cat out of the bag here. And we'll talk about it more as we hear what the actual testimony is. But if I'm the defense, I take this testimony about the Aruba incident, I flip it and reverse it, right? Because what I say is, members of the jury, we don't even know if Karen Reed was jealous on the night of January 28th, the morning of January 29th. Nobody said that she was jealous. Nobody said she did anything to prove that she was jealous. Because when Karen Reed's jealous, she lets you know. She lets the person she's jealous of know, because we know the sister who's about to come up knew that she was jealous. She lets John O'Keefe know she's jealous and anyone else around that can hear her screaming about it. And when she is jealous, what does she do? She screams. And then she apologizes. She doesn't hit John O'Keefe with a car. She doesn't hurt people when she's jealous. That's what I would do. That's what I would argue. The door's open at this point. The judge let all this in. I'm not so sure that'd be an appropriate propensity argument on the defense's side. But if the judge is going to let this evidence in and this testimony in to say it's motive, say, well, then what's her habit? What does she do with this motive? That's what I'd argue. But let's listen to the story here.
Yes. Yep.
So, Ms. Sullivan, if I could take you back again. So, Mr. O'Keefe comes out, you have a conversation with him. Can you describe to the jury what that conversation was about?
I turned around and I was pretty shocked to see him. I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Nothing." I said, "Did Etta and Karen have words?" And he said, "I don't know." And I said, "Well, that's not what Etta said." And I asked him if everything was okay. And at that time, his phone was lighting up, and it looked like calls and texts, and it said Karen on his phone.
After you make that observation, what did you say to John?
I asked him if he needed to take it, and he said, "Yes, she's crazy. I got to take care of this."
Okay, so John O'Keefe thought Karen was crazy at the time. Nobody's saying they were a perfect relationship and they never got in a fight, but pretty much everybody said they were fine that night and affectionate that night. That's what I'm saying. If I'm the jury, that's where this loses a little sting, is because I get it. I think this is a believable story. I'm not saying these people are lying. I think Karen Reed probably did get mad and jealous at times and maybe even yelled at somebody she thought kissed John O'Keefe. Maybe John O'Keefe thought she was crazy. But how does it prove what she did that night? That's the question we have to ask ourselves.
And was that the last time that you saw him on New Year's Eve?
It is.
Now, turning your attention to the following day, New Year's Day, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed at all on that day?
I did not. I saw the children, but we didn't see them that day. No.
Now, turning your attention to the following day, being January 2nd, what was sort of the plan as far as what was going on that?
Our hotel has a private island. The hotel we stay at has a private island, and we rented all 8 of the cabanas between the 60 of us that were there. And when the cabanas went on sale, I had reached out to John and asked him if he wanted me to get him one. And he said, sure. So I booked one for him, and he paid me for that cabana. So we all went out that morning. And it was probably around 10 o'clock in the morning, and they weren't there yet. And so I sent him a text and I said, are you coming, or do you want me to sell this cabana because there was other, couples there. At least he could have made, the money back. And he asked me who was there. And I said, everybody. And I named off a couple names. I'm not really sure, but I said, everybody's here.
And when you said that, how did Mr. O'Keefe respond?
He said, well, apparently I made out with your sister the other night, according to Karen.
Now, is that the first time that you had heard that?
Yes.
Now, I don't think anybody's going to say it's wrong to get mad if you think you see your boyfriend kissing another woman, right? But if it didn't happen, if she overreacts, if she's crazy, fine. But that is one little element that I thought was kind of interesting here. Brad said apologizing equals guilty to the world. A lot of people feel that way. Elena, so answered this question already a little bit about how because he's deceased and this goes to his state of mind, it's an exception to hearsay. There was a question I wanted to read here. Now I can't find it. Oh, Wafa. Peter, doesn't it show that she had enough with the screaming and paying for people? I don't know. I mean, if they bring evidence that like this has happened so much and she was just sick of it, maybe. Din said, how could she hit him with a car in Aruba? I meant with her hands. Like this was again, an amplified version of Aruba. Maybe it got so bad that she got sick of it, like Wafa said. And in Aruba, she just slapped him, but that wasn't enough. He didn't learn his lesson, so she had to do something more. That's what I was looking for, and that's what I thought was coming again. I'm not saying it had to be that. Just from someone who didn't know what this story was, that's what I thought I was going to hear. JC said she did apologize, so in my eyes, she knew she was jealous and John didn't like it. Mo said if she was capable of murder and jealous, how did she survive Aruba and then seemed happy at the bar? Everyone testified to them seeming happy. I mean, it would obviously have to be a more intense issue. Shelby, I had a hard time with these sisters. I was Karen Reed minus the trial. My boyfriend of 8 years passed away, and mean girls showed weird possession over my boyfriend and were vile and hateful toward me. That's terrible, Shelby. Sorry to hear that. Unpopular opinion from the Steffi K. I believe Karen unknowingly hit John, but the McAlberts are so shady and covering things up that it'll be hard to convict and no evidence. I think that's possible. Lacey, I had a thought/theory today. What if the group had a different plan, but then Karen Reed backed into JK's car, and so they took that and decided to pin it on her rather than whatever their original plan was? Honestly, this stuff is impossible for me to answer. I mean, the reason and motivation behind any plans does not necessarily affect the not guilty verdict if the state cannot get beyond all reasonable doubt. Miss Filbert Godfrey, when AJ was crossing JM, do you think he was paying attention to how the jury was reacting? I would guess yes. Would he keep going harder if the jury seemed okay with it? Not be so aggressive if the jury was okay with it? So jury facial expressions, just from somebody who's tried a lot of cases, you can't always tell from their facial expressions. They don't all wear their heart on their sleeve. Sometimes you can tell certain things. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you get in the heat of the moment. So I would say lawyers usually pay attention, but they're not always as keen and perceptive as we'd always like to be.
Fair to say whatever you had heard from your sister on December 31st was not that.
Objection. No, I'll allow that.
Correct.
And what was your reaction when Mr. O'Keefe told you this?
Objection. I'll allow it.
I was shocked. I immediately found my sister and said, did you make out with John?
Objection. Sustained.
Now, when you went to talk to your sister, who was it that your sister was with when you went to talk to her about that?
I don't recall who was standing near her. Maybe my mom. I don't know.
As far as your sister was concerned at that time, was she dating someone?
Yes,
The person that she was dating, was that person on the trip as well?
he was. Yes.
And was that
They're
person?
trying to prove it didn't happen. Obviously, his sister said it didn't happen, even though, technically hearsay couldn't get that in. We get it from the sister, which is also another thing. I never know why lawyers ask the question to this person when the sister's coming next to say it didn't happen. But, and she had a boyfriend, so obviously she wasn't kissing John. The sister gives us more reasons why she would never kiss John. And, so what does that make Karen Reed seem crazier? Like she's making stuff up to get jealous? I'm not really sure.
Person that she was dating was on the trip as well, where they had the bananas on that day.
They were. Yes.
Now, as far as you have some conversation in regard to your sister, and then at some point you go back and have her.
Basically rented the whole boat for everybody to go.
And so that conversation, just turning back for a moment, as far as with regard to Ms. Reed, You know what day that would have been as far as in relation to when they were leaving? Early January, 37th?
I want to say it was the 5th. I want to say it was January 5th.
Now, after Aruba, did you have any conversation with Mr. O'Keefe after that?
I talked to him via text a couple times about a couple different things, but one of them was, as I mentioned, we start planning a year in advance. And I said, rooms are coming.
So I think I skipped ahead from the part a little bit about Karen apologized. It's insisted to pay for some of her sister's room. And again, if you do something wrong, I think the right thing to do is apologize and try to make up for it. I think you should try not to do the wrong things, right? You should try not to, scream at people drunkenly and, be jealous and whatever. But if you do that, I think the appropriate thing is to apologize. That's not to say, and to me, that's where I struggle a little bit with this testimony. I'm not sure how it applies necessarily to what happened on January 28th. But she said the apology was January 5th. So again, we're getting closer and closer and closer to January 28th. Not as close as the night of at the bar, but a little bit closer, a little bit closer, a little bit closer. Then we get to cross-examination. And if you remember from last night's video that I did, I was thinking, oh, maybe, the defense is not going to cross again because she wasn't at the waterfall. She wasn't at Fairview. She's not part of the cover-up that they're trying to go with. So maybe they're making a point as we don't even need to cross these witnesses because they don't matter. And we don't care. We don't care what these people say. They had nothing to do with the cover-up. Sullivan wasn't there. She doesn't know. She doesn't like Karen Reed. Fine, whatever. Karen Reed was mean to her sister. That does not affect our case, and it's irrelevant, and we're going to prove it's irrelevant by not cross-examining her. That's what I thought was going to happen, and then Yannetti stands up. I was like, well, guess I was wrong, but let's listen to this cross.
Thank you. I have nothing further for this witness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Ms. Sullivan.
Good afternoon.
You were not present at the Waterfall Bar and Grill on January 28th of 2022 in Canton.
I was not.
All right, so he confirms that. Off to a good start with my theory so far.
You were not present at 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th of 2022.
It's not.
All right, he confirms that as well. Again, pointing to the jury, in my opinion, that this is not a relevant witness. Doesn't matter.
Yet you'll agree with me that Michael Proctor, the state police trooper, visited you at your home only in Pembroke, Massachusetts on February 8th of 2022
Yes.
to interview you?
Yes.
Nothing further.
So what was the point of that? And that's the entire cross, by the way. And what's the point? That this person was not at the scene of the crime, was not where, the motive or criminal stuff started at the waterfall, if there was a motive and jealousy and whatever it was, not an eyewitness, doesn't know what happened to John, just heard through other people. But her testimony that we just heard was so important that Proctor had to go and interview her on February 8th, I believe it was. So, less than 10 days post-incident. But what about Colin Albert? What about Allie McCabe? What about all the other people connected to the Alberts? Everybody else that was at the waterfall, everybody else that was at Fairview. Months and months and months went by without Proctor interviewing them, without getting their story, their testimony, the all-important timeline. What did they see? What did they hear? What did they drink? What did Karen drink? What did Karen say? So before he went and talked to, months before he went and talked to any of those people or most of those people, he interviewed this witness. So people have asked me, Peter, do you think that somebody tipped him off to a motive? I don't know. Why are you asking that question? Peter, do you think that he was trying to create and make sure this got pinned on Karen Reed and this witness helped him do it with this motive a few weeks earlier? I don't know. Is that an argument the defense is going to make? Probably. I find that very interesting. I thought that was a great cross-examination, all 2 seconds of it. Because I was thinking to myself, I didn't even think of that. And Lally certainly didn't ask when she was interviewed. And then for some reason, Lally asks her if somebody came with Proctor.
Do you?
Yes.
Nothing further.
Anything to
Just briefly, as far as Trooper Proctor coming to your house, was he alone, or who, if anyone else, was he with when he
He
came?
was with another trooper,
Okay. And do you recall who that trooper was?
Trooper Fanning.
Nothing further on.
Let's say, what about there's a long list, Mo, a long list. I wasn't giving the exhausted list. But yeah, I agree with you. It's wild. So basically he just confirms that Proctor wasn't alone. So then now we get to Marietta Sullivan, the sister here, who was accused of kissing John by Karen Reed. And the judge gives the first instruction again. And let's get to her kind of explanation of what happened on that trip and that day with this, jealousy interaction.
She must also have committed the offenses with which she's been charged. You can only use the evidence for the limited purpose of how it goes to the defendant's state of mind, motive, and the nature of her relationship with John O'Keefe. And for the same findings that I made at sidebar.
Proceed, then.
Yes.
So you walk out of the elevator, you're by yourself, correct?
Yes.
And you see Mr. O'Keefe. Could you see where Mr. O'Keefe was in relation to the lobby or where he was coming from?
He was coming from the outside doors into the lobby,
Is that where the pool bar is located?
opposite side. Yes.
And when you see him come in, who, if anyone, do you see with him initially?
Nobody with him.
And what, if anything, was he doing or how was he acting sort of when?
So he sort of stumbled in. I came out of the elevator and my initial response to him was, "Whoa, you okay?" I actually said, "Whoa, Godfather, are you okay?" But yeah, he was stumbling into the lobby.
And did you go over to him at that point?
I did. I went up to him and I gave him a hug.
And what happened then?
I pulled back. He was glassy-eyed, looking above me. We never made eye contact. He was looking above me. It looked like he was looking for someone. I asked him, "Where are you going?"
So clearly drunk, right? I mean, clearly John O'Keefe was drunk. She comes off. He's glassy-eyed. He's stumbling.
Assuming that he would be coming to the pool bar to meet us. He kept looking around and he indicated that he was going that way and pointed toward a bank of rooms to our right. And I said, "Well, you should go that way." And I stepped back and I guided him toward the area that he was going.
Now, as far as the bank of rooms to the right, you indicated that you were familiar or aware of where Mr. O'Keefe was and where the children were. Is that correct?
I know they were on the first floor. I'm not 100% positive as to where exactly their rooms were.
And if you know, did you know whether or not that Mr. O'Keefe was staying in the same room as Patrick and Kaylee at that point?
I didn't know that if they were staying in the same room or not, no.
So you point him in that direction, and what happened?
So I pointed in that direction. He walked off. I continued out to the pool bar when I heard very loudly his name screamed across the lobby, very angrily, and it made me stop in my tracks.
And when you stop in your tracks, what happened?
I started to turn around to come back in. So once you go out to the pool bar, you kind of go around a corner and you go out of view. So I turned around to go back in. As I'm going back in, I hear someone yell, "Who the fuck was that?" And as I come around the corner, I see Mr. O'Keefe walking toward a woman. And he said, excuse me. He said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister."
And what happened then?
When I came back around the corner, I said, after Mr. O'Keefe said, "Calm down, that's Laura's little sister," I said, "Hi, nice to meet you." That's when Miss Reed's head snapped up and she very loudly told me to go fuck myself across the lobby. And I said, "Yeah, fuck you too," and walked away.
Sounds like a nice exchange. But okay, Karen Reed thought she saw something, got mad, got jealous. Is that enough for motive? What do you guys think? Is that enough for motive for hitting him with a car intentionally? Because that's what she's charged with, second-degree murder, 3 weeks later.
And just to be clear, when you say Ms. Reed, this is someone that you became familiar with as the trip went along?
This was my first interaction with her. I had never been fully introduced to her at all. I just had seen her sitting by the side of the pool when I had been talking to Johnny earlier in the day.
And the person you know to be Ms. Reed, do you see her in the courtroom today?
I do.
Could you just describe as to where she's seated or what article of clothing that she's wearing?
Sure. She's in a black and white checkered blazer. She's 2 people in from you.
Does that record reflect identification?
Yes.
Thank you.
So some people are asking questions like this. Michael, will John's niece give compelling testimony as to the nature of the relationship with Karen? How do they cross her? Maybe they won't cross her. They haven't been afraid not to cross certain witnesses. And I mean, I don't know where the O'Keefe kids stand. I don't know if they're with or against Karen. You know, the only thing that anybody's accused her of with the kids is spoiling them. So I have no idea how that testimony would go. Melly, no relationship is perfect. Was she jealous that night? Has Jen ever been jealous? Did KR even ever hit anybody with her car before when she was just jealous? All good questions, Melly. Nina, Peter, have you seen it before that 2 weeks the state didn't present a single evidence of how a victim was killed? Police officer victim. This case is unique. I will put it that way. This is not a very normal case to me. And I would just say if I was the prosecutor and this was the evidence I had, I would hate to try this case. Green Mermaid. Can jurors keep notes? McCabe, Alberts are so shady. Yes, they can take notes. Usually you can't keep them or take them home with you, or it's mostly you got to rely on how you remember it happening. Jessamy, Boston girl here. A lot of Boston people, which is really cool. And a lot of people saying like, I like watching it with you. I don't feel like I have to be on one side or the other. In some places where I watch, I feel like I got to be one side or the other. And I get it. If I had a fight with my boy, it's scary to think if I had a fight with my boyfriend and then he passed away, that our justice system would use that event to charge me with murder. So I will say, I will stick up for the justice system a little bit. That's not all. There has to be a lot more than that. And in our justice system, you don't have to prove murder. I'm sorry, motive. You don't have to prove motive. So it's not an essential element they would have to prove anyway. So they're usually not going to stretch and try to find a motive if one doesn't exist. But if one exists, obviously the story makes more sense. Like we see with the Chad Daybell case, money, power, sex as the motive. Here, they're trying to make jealousy the motive. And sometimes when you reach on a motive, I think you can swing and miss. And that might be happening here as well. Ned said, will Lally call the kids to testify about what happened in the hotel room after the interactions with the Sullivan sisters there on the witness list? So I don't know what they would come testify to. I honestly don't know. Wafa, if Karen is not guilty of why leave his house right away and not say a word to his family, isn't that such odd behavior? So I don't know what I need, like some dates and times. When you mean, there's a lot of things that are weird in this case either way. Bill Smith, off topic. Jen said Lank told her to go to the house, but it appears in Seraph's testimony video that she went to the house before Lank was there. It also appears that there are lights on in the house. So if there's video of that stuff, I'm going to need the defense to put it all together because there's so much going on. A lot of it can be confusing, and the defense has to put it together if they're trying to prove some specific fact like that. But as it sits, the burden is with the state beyond a reasonable doubt, and I think they are a far cry away from that. They have more time and they have more witnesses, so we're not going to call it yet, but we're not close to reasonable doubt yet, in my estimation, with my vote.
As far as Ms. Reed was concerned, what, if anything, did you observe as far as the defendants beyond the yelling? What, if anything, did you observe as far as her demeanor or how she was acting at the time that this interaction was going on?
She was just very loud. She very, energetically screamed for me to go fuck myself. She was waving her hands. Johnny was trying to calm her down.
She was loud and energetic. I mean, are they trying to parallel that to how she acted the night? I don't understand. I would be kind of annoyed, but again, I'm a trial lawyer. I think about what stuff is relevant, what comes in, what doesn't. The jury probably wants to know the story. They probably want these details. You can correct me if I'm wrong in the chat on how you guys would think and feel about this. From my perspective, I'm just like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this?
And after I said, yeah, fuck you too, I went out to the pool bar. So I didn't see much after that.
Emmy says that's just a boss.
And could you hear anything as far as when you were walking out to the pool bar, as far as any other conversation between the defendant and Ms. Rose?
Not after that first time, no.
You go back to the, or you go out to the pool bar, and with anyone did you talk to?
I went straight up to my older sister, Laura, who was out to dinner with the couple the night before. And I said,
I'll allow this part.
I went up to her and I looked at her and I said, John O'Keefe's girlfriend. And she looked at me and said, Karen. And I said, yeah, you guys like her? She said, yeah, she's okay. And I said, well, she sucks.
You guys like her? She sucks. Sounds a little mean girlsy. But I would get it too. I would be annoyed if somebody accused me of something I didn't do and exploded like that. So I kind of understand everybody's perspective. And Karen Reed was wrong and apologized for it. And I understand why they would think she sucks. I would probably think she sucks too. I get it. I get all of this. I am struggling a little bit to see how we connect the dot to January 28th.
Now, following that, that particular, at any point in time later in that evening, did you see either Mr. O'Keefe or Ms. Reed later on that evening?
I did not see them, no.
And when was the next time that you did see them?
I saw them briefly on the 2nd, which was the day that we rented cabanas on the island.
And when you say you briefly saw them, can you describe?
So we had all rented the cabanas. Each family had one or they were sharing one. I was sharing one with my family down at the end. We got about halfway through the day and realized that their family cabana was still empty. So I saw them about halfway through the day when they did come to the cabana, and I briefly saw Ms. Reed and Mr. O'Keefe at the pool, the island bar, that same day, but there was no conversation.
Now, with regard to Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed, at some point in time on that day of the cabanas, what, if any, conversation did you have with your sister regarding that?
So my,
I don't know what this is. I'll see you at sidebar quickly. Section that I gave you regarding evidence of statements made by John O'Keefe for the limited purpose of establishing his state of mind. And I will fully give you this instruction again at the end of the case. So it's the same one that I already gave you. Go ahead, Mr. Lally.
Ms. Sullivan, with regard to the day of the cabanas, did you have some conversation with your sister Laura in regards to Mr. O'Keefe and Ms. Reed?
I did.
And what, if anything, did your sister Laura tell you she had learned from Mr. O'Keefe?
So my sister pulled me aside from everybody and asked if the night that I got into the altercation with Ms. Reed in the lobby, if I was making out with Mr. O'Keefe.
How did you respond?
That I absolutely was not.
And when you say absolutely was not, beyond the fact that it didn't occur, why would that not occur?
I'll allow it.
He was family. He was my older brother. For all intents and purposes, it just never would have happened between us.
And you expressed that to your sister? Is that
And they're like trying to prove so much that they did not kiss. But again, whether or not they kissed is not important. What's important is Karen Reed got jealous. I mean, I think to the Commonwealth, that's what they're really trying to prove. I guess they're also trying to prove that maybe she overreacted and got jealous in times that she shouldn't have even gotten jealous. Hamp said, I would be very divided as a juror. I keep asking myself, are the police, fire department, and witnesses actually conspiring against a woman who should probably be on medication for bipolar disorder? I definitely think there are some jurors that are just trying to figure out what's going on. Randy asked, Peter, how do I upgrade my membership? I think that's in the actual membership tab that you can click and click which one. If anybody in the chat knows how to, they can answer Randy probably better in better language than I can.
Is that correct?
I did, yes.
Now, as far as the remainder of the trip was concerned, starting with the defendant, Ms. Reed, what, if any, other interactions did you have with her?
None.
And as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned, what, if any, further interactions did you have with him?
None. That was it.
And was that normal or as far as Mr. O'Keefe was concerned?
Objection.
I'll allow it.
That, as far as I knew Johnny, that wasn't normal. He would always come up to us, up to our family, try to be around my nephew, his godchild. And he was always the life of the party and wanted to be around his family and his friends.
And following that trip in Aruba, did you see Mr. O'Keefe again?
I did not.
I have nothing further on.
All right, Ms. Giannetti.
Thank you, Laura. Good afternoon, Ms. Sullivan.
Good afternoon.
Fair to say that you were not at the Waterfall Bar and Grill on January 28th of 2022 in Canton.
I was not.
So here is the same cross basically that her sister got.
You were not at 34 Fairview Road in Canton on January 29th, correct?
Was not.
Yet Trooper Proctor drove all the way to Pembroke to interview you on February 8th of 2022. Did he not?
He did.
Nothing further.
Ms. Lally, anything?
We're going to listen to this redirect because this redirect is very interesting to me. Very interesting. Couple questions first. NJ Robin. Peter, have you ever seen facial injuries like John had, but no body injuries after being hit by an SUV at 23 miles an hour? So what I'll say is, I am not an expert. I have dealt with a lot of car accidents and a lot that have ended in wrongful death and pedestrian accidents where cars or trucks have hit pedestrians. And I have seen some cases. Usually there's not no damage to the body, but blunt force trauma to the head can be the cause of death. Usually it's from hitting the pavement or street, not necessarily the collision or connection with the car or motorcycle. But I don't think I've ever seen where there's nothing below the neck. And I don't know that that's happening in this case. And like I said, I'm not an accident reconstructionist expert, regardless of how many cases I've dealt with car accidents. Brian said, my wife and I have an excellent relationship marriage, but if she saw me stumbling drunk in a hotel lobby on vacation, she's probably pretty angry at me too. Listen, I'm not going to tell people how to live their lives, but I think this is plausible. It really seems to me Karen Reed is the type of person who should not be drinking. I don't know. Everybody here was drinking, so I think it's tough for one of them to condemn the other for drinking. Lacey Lace. The Sullivan sisters' testimonies are nothing burger, waste of time for the jury. I feel like the prosecution is using this event to turn the sisters against Karen. I think they're for sure at least using it to try to make Karen look bad. I think that's also important for them because most of the witnesses so far are like, oh yeah, John would get really annoyed because she would spoil his kids. It's like, ooh, what a monster. So I do think they're trying to at least get a little bit of the generally bad guy rule going against Karen, but we'll see how it goes. So let's listen to this redirect. I found it very interesting, the questions.
Very briefly. Ms. Sullivan, when Trooper Proctor came to the house in Pembroke, were you living there at that time?
I was.
And was he alone or was he with another trooper?
He was with another trooper.
And do you recall that trooper's name?
I don't.
Now, with regard to your conversation with Trooper Proctor and the other trooper that day, was it just you that he spoke to?
Just me.
Let me ask it a different way.
Okay.
As far as when the troopers came to your house on February 8th, are you the only person from your home that the troopers spoke to that day?
No.
Who, if anyone else, did they speak to in the home?
They spoke to my sister first.
And at any point, did they speak to your sister's boyfriend as well?
No.
And when they spoke to you, when they spoke to you, where was your sister?
She was outside of the house. She went to go pick up my nephew.
And when they spoke to your sister, where were you?
I was downstairs in my room, which was in the basement.
And could you hear what they were talking about when they were talking to your sister?
I could not.
So did you see what he did there? Did you see what Lally did there? He's like, you know what? Just to make your testimony more credible, Proctor didn't go by himself, right? Right. He brought somebody else. Okay, good. Because he shouldn't be doing this by himself. He didn't say that, but that's what he's inferring. Number two, did he interview you with everybody else around? Or did he interview you by yourself? Interviewed me by myself. What about when he interviewed your sister? Were you there to listen to that interview? No, I was in the basement. So he interviewed her without you in her presence, right? Right. So this must be really credible testimony for those interviews because he didn't interview together, because you don't want to interview witnesses together, and he didn't do it by himself. Problem with that is there are so many other instances in this case where Proctor didn't follow that protocol and procedure. And that's a problem because you just highlighted the fact that all witnesses in interviews should have been done that way because they are more credible that way. Which I found really interesting that that's what he decided to focus his redirect on. Red Wine Pizza says, the jealousy motivate cuts both ways. Higgins seems jealous of KR and John the night in question. Well, we still have to wait because we haven't seen that yet. Myself. Alicia Joe, to prove reasonable doubt, this trial needs to present more evidence against Karen Reed. It needs to be more focused rather than confusing. Quality over quantity. Emily said he has injuries to his organs. They're inside the body. That would be a lot more normal. I would expect to see that in a fatal collision. Again, I don't know what it's going to show yet. Nina, Peter, can you explain when, how bad character evidence testimony is allowed? I always hear it is not admissible. It's not admissible to show that there's a propensity or the person is more likely to act the same way in that character, but it can be shown or it can be used to prove motive, opportunity, intent, modus operandi, the way they do things, habit evidence potentially. So there are a lot of different uses for it, but you can't be used to say, you know, hey, he punched this guy 20 years ago, so that means it's proof he punched a guy today. Can't use it that way. What's happening? Kevin, Albert, and wife were supposedly in Aruba as well. That's how Jen was able to tip off Proctor right away. I can't see Karen getting jealous of Marietta. She may have been a stalker by the way she tried to keep John in the lobby. I think Karen and John were protecting their vacation from her drama. I don't know. If I was on this jury, the Commonwealth would be losing my attention. I would have a few simple questions. Did KR's Lexus kill John O'Keefe? The testimony feels soap opera-ish. I get it. And then we've also heard that tomorrow we can expect to hear from Brian Higgins. Ashley said after the Higgins direct and how it goes, I think the parents should decide if the kids should or shouldn't take the stand. Why put them through this and the way this trial is going? I mean, it's going to suck. It's incredibly sad. You don't want to put them through it for sure. Carrie, the very end of yesterday's trial, the judge is asking that tomorrow's witness needs to be completed, as she said, for a number of reasons. And Alan Jackson smiles widely. Big stuff coming tomorrow. So let's see if we can see that. There's still 9 minutes. Let's see. Let's listen to this kind of end of the day. Make sure you guys hit the like button if you haven't already. Almost 10,000 of us here in the chat. So let's get to 10,000 likes.
I'm hopeful. I am.
All right, so hopefully we will
What was Yannetti?
You may be seated.
All right, so hopefully we will start and finish.
Guys couldn't see that. I'm going to back it up one more time. I'm going to make myself smaller so you can see the whole screen. Yannetti makes like a face.
You may be seated.
All right, so hopefully we will start and finish that one witness on Friday anyway, but have a second witness here.
I'll have at least a couple other witnesses.
Okay, but it would be great if we could complete the testimony of that one witness for all sorts of reasons.
I will do my best. I'm hopeful. I am. I'm hopeful. I think we do.
Okay. Anything I need to look at or anything in particular for Friday?
And that's Higgins that they're referencing that we all think. And the reason Jackson says he's hopeful and not the state, because the state's calling it. And to me, I think that Jackson's crosses have been so long too at times because he's basically turning them into his witnesses. Because again, the defense is trying to prove and do some things in this trial that are somewhat different from time to time than other trials. Mary M says, regarding the chat, not you, Peter, not cool to throw around mental health diagnosis from afar. Heard about how unethical this is in depth. We can do better, Laura, fam. Yeah, I mean, I think it's okay to say there may be issues, especially, the night in question. She was definitely having some breakdowns and some issues. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know what anybody's dealing with at any given time. My opinion, everybody's better off alcohol. But I get it. And I agree with you. And we should all be careful about doing that. Kim said, after the new motion today about Higgins, I have a feeling he won't be on the stand tomorrow. Yeah, people were saying they discovered some medical records from Higgins. I don't know if that's he is not going to be able to take the stand and they needed to prove that he has a medical issue and that's why they had to present those records. I have no idea, but stuff's happening. Little April said, I had so much fun watching you have so much fun with Whitney and John, who were having fun with you. Thank you. Love to Sandra Birchmore Canton case. Yeah, we had our members only live yesterday. For any of the new members from today's video, you can go back and watch that. It was pretty hilarious. It was a lot more fun than I expected. I'll give John credit for that. Reality Squad, if Karen Reed is acquitted, do you think the Commonwealth will reopen the investigation? No, not the Commonwealth. Will somebody else? I don't know. Josh, off topic, but just sent you a brand new video of the Scotty Scheffler arrest on Messenger. It shows it to be an egregious case of overcharging. Well, Josh, I appreciate you and so many people sending me stuff on that case and other cases. But guess what, Josh? I've got something for you. Tonight, 8:00 p.m. Eastern, I have already watched that and the press conference and reacted to it, broke it down. So make sure you're subscribed and hit the notification bell and don't miss that Scotty Scheffler video tonight because it's really interesting. The brand new camera angles and that press conference, we get some new hints about what we think is going to happen. Mary Claire, so much fun at Last Night Members Only Live. Thank you, Whit and John. Yes. Anybody that's not a member, consider becoming a member and hanging out with us. Kind of just fun, chill, behind the scenes stuff, not law related or professional by any means. Hopefully not embarrassing ourselves too much either. Michael, it came in as proof that he was going to break up with her and that the jury could infer that she knew that, which goes to motive. I'm trying to remember who said that he said he was going to break up with her. I know there's obviously been rumblings that it wasn't as great as it seemed, but I don't know. Azam, thank you for the super sticker. And Diane, thank you for the super sticker. And welcome to 3 Frenchies and all the other new members. All right, we got this one done in under an hour. How about that? I appreciate everybody who joined. We're going to be back on the Read Grind tomorrow. Chad Daybell's case, the defense rested. We'll probably do a video on that at some point before the end of the week or the weekend. And again, like I said, Scotty Scheffler tonight. So make sure you guys are subscribed. Make sure you liked this video if you haven't already. I'll hit this one, Cindy Lou, on the way out. Not saying Karen Reed is guilty. I think more accident and she panicked. Can't comprehend the Alberts police, state police, EMTs are all trying to frame her. Yeah, I don't know. I got to be honest. I don't know what happened. And at the end of the day, I know that that is bad for the Commonwealth. All right. We're calling it. Until next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.